I thought I knew what greatness was. We all think we do, right? It's the strongest, the fastest, the best. The person standing on the top of the podium. The peak of a data chart. Welcome to the Odd Objects podcast. My name is Tommy Lovell. In 2019, I won World's Strongest Man as a lightweight, 80 kilos, baby. For the uninitiated, that's about 176 pounds, so the average size of the average man. Being the world's strongest average-sized man seemed to be like a great achievement. I'm not 6'5", I don't weigh 400 pounds. There are way more people on this planet that look like me than look like that. That had to mean something, right? And in the moment, when I was sat there at the top of the podium, I thought, this is it, here we go. This is what I worked for. Then something happened. Or rather, nothing happened. After the podium, after the photos, after the moment, I was still me. The next podium of winners stepped up. I still had to pack my bags, get on a plane, and go home. This sure didn't feel like greatness. In a lot of ways, it felt like nothing at all. So I started wondering, what is greatness? If it wasn't that, then what? Today you'll hear from 3 guests, each of whom now occupies a special little place in my mind. 3 different people, 3 different ways of thinking, 3 areas of expertise. Each one guiding me further along my journey to find out, what does it mean to be the greatest of all time? Chapter 1, the objective becomes subjective. Let me find my questions so that we can sort of stay on topic. But honestly, just chat.
Quite goosey. Yeah, no, that's cool.
Well, I wasn't expecting you guys to be down in the lobby. I would have had all this ready.
Oh no.
So yeah, let's just jump right in. The more we talk, the better I get at talking. Just over a year ago, I sat down to talk with Liz Shahlei about a ranking system for Strongman. She and her husband Laz run a YouTube channel called Big Laz Official that covers the sport of Strongman. So I thought she would be the perfect person to talk to about a ranking system. At the time, I was obsessed with coming up with a ranking system for Strongman so that we could see in real time how we stacked up against each other. I didn't realize at the time that this would be the beginning of a 1.5-year journey to find the answer to a completely different question. But it all started with this conversation right here. Tell us who you are.
Oh.
And why are you here? Why should you be here?
For some crazy reason, you asked me on your podcast. But I am Liz Shahlei, wife of former Europe's Strongest Man, Liz Shahlei, or Lawrence, and one half of Big Laz Official.
I like Lawrence. I find myself calling you Lawrence instead, and then I always wonder, I wonder if that would be rude if you feel like I'm your mother or something.
He doesn't like his name that much.
Yeah, well, I've never had the need to call your name from across a room, so.
No, Lawrence. So that's usually Lozzie, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but.
Okay, so the reason, I wanted to have you on in chat with you is because I was watching some of your videos about ranking people. And rankings have just come up so much for me in the last 1.5 years. And the more you talk about rankings, the harder they get to talk about and to think about, right? Just if you sort of look at powerlifting, it's 3 lifts, it's super objective. And then in Strongman, it's super subjective. Every show's different, every movement's different. But you had a very objective way of sort of ranking people. And I just thought you might be a fun person to talk to about all these other ideas that I have.
Probably a complicated person to talk to, because just like you, I get myself into more and more of a muddle the deeper I look into it, because there's so many ways to look at it and so much to consider in Strongman. Like you say, it's not like powerlifting where you know it's going to be the exact same 3 lifts every single time. It's almost like a different sport from event to event because the events can vary so much. In football, they always play football. In golf, they always play golf. And yeah, there's differences, like in tennis, they play on different surfaces. But are there any other sports like Strongman or CrossFit where they're doing something so totally different from one event to the next and from one competition to the next?
So let's start with, how do you rank athletes? What does that look like? What are the things that are important? And how would you come up with a ranking where you give sort of points to people?
Yeah, so It first really came about doing some sort of ranking system to us. I think it was 2 years ago when we did our first top 10 strongmen of 2021. And Loz is so casual and breezy, but I really need a way to justify and rationalize what I'm saying, and numbers, I guess, to like quantify it. I need something I can look at and say, yes, this makes sense because of this, this, and this. So the way I was looking at it was ranking each competition in terms of prestige. And that's like, the competition itself. You say something like the world's strongest man, obviously very prestigious competition.
Well, it's funny you say even obviously, because the prestige is sort of subjective too, right?
Of course, yeah. And there's new competitions coming along all the time. Like if you look at Brian's competition now, where it is compared to when it first started in 2020, that's grown rapidly into, one of the top 4 competitions of the year. But I guess you're looking at who are they up against? Who do they have to beat? So it's all very well one guy goes and competes week in, week out. But if he's not beating anyone else who's in that conversation of, the top guys, how much does it really mean? That sounds really harsh because you can only beat who's in front of you, but it's still important, isn't it? Names matter.
You know what Liz is talking about actually reminds me of the way chess is ranked. So in chess, you start off with a base score of 1,200, and then your score will go up or down based on if you win or lose, obviously. But the amount it goes up or down has to do with the ranking of the player that you win or lose against. And there are also some other really cool things, like the system predicts how likely you are to win based on ratings. And then if you exceed expectations, you gain more points. But we're not talking about chess. We're talking about strongman. So I want to find out how Liz ranks strongman.
The way I do it, I try to assign points for certain competitions. So a win at this competition would be worth 10 points. A win at this competition would be worth maybe 5. And then I go through someone's competition history for a full year, add those up. Does that feel right? So there is still some, it is still subjective because I move people around because, okay, they won that competition, but so-and-so got injured, so-and-so pulled out. So there's still, a lot of it is still opinion. But it does help me be clear on what I'm thinking and feeling and why.
Do you think you do take the objective approach because so many people are watching what you say?
Maybe to an extent. And it's really difficult when you're friends with the people that you're essentially putting into like a pecking order. Yeah. You're better than him and he's better than you. So it's
you can show the point sheet. He's only a half point better.
Yeah, it's not me. It's the numbers. Yeah. The numbers don't lie.
The numbers never lie.
Yeah, maybe I'm too.
I did make up the numbers. But
yeah, I think you're better than him. Yeah, but no, it does help me rationalize some of it, and also to think about things in a different way because it's easy to forget people as well. We think of the top names like right now this year in Pro Open Strongman. No one's had a year like Mitch Hooper. He won the Arnold's, he's won the Rogue Invitational, of course. He won the World's Strongest Man. That's quite easy ranking for me to say, okay, this guy is number 1. But I'm not going to look at the World's Strongest Man top 10 this year and say, that's the top 10 this year. 10, yeah. Because there's so much more to it. There's guys who did the Arnold's who didn't do Worlds. The guys who couldn't make certain shows, guys who weren't in shape for certain shows. So it's still, there's a lot that can go wrong with my system, but I feel better doing it that way.
So let me skip my little list of questions because you keep saying things that I really keep thinking about. Maybe I'll just sort of list them off and see if anyone inspires you. Maybe like, okay. So you mentioned somebody gets injured. What I'm thinking about now is I'm sort of abstracting away from rankings and sort of thinking about the word I keep coming back to is greatness. And I don't know if I need to find a better word or...
Greatness is a great word.
So can the greatest be your potential or only what you've accomplished? So if you keep getting injured, like they're the best, but they just kept getting injured, and you think, well, the ability to not get injured is the thing that made you great in the first place, or is it?
Right. Yeah. I guess like when we think about injuries, availability and ability are kind of one and the same, So if you can't be available to compete because you keep getting injured.
Oh, I love that.
Then you don't have the ability potentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly what I think, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's fair, like protecting your body. And like when we talk about great, like to me, Zydrunas is the greatest. And there's many, many factors that go into that. But one of them is the fact that the longevity of his career. He was at World's Strongest Man in the 90s. And he was there in like the 10, he last won it in 2014. So it's what he did over such a long period of time. And he did suffer injuries. He had some huge, he blew out both of his patellas. And he was told, he'd never be able to compete again. And that was before he'd won anything big. Obviously, he went on to win the Arnold's 8 times, World's Strongest Man 4 times, and he's the most decorated strongman by far.
Someone in some group chat I'm in.
Okay. We're all in them.
Yeah, we're talking about something about greatness, and someone was saying, well, you look at the stats, you look at this, and then someone else said, well, no, it's what they do outside of the sport. And then, you look at longevity, and I just have this idea of like, if someone wins everything else, but then takes second at OSG, are they better than the person who won OSG or not? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, the person who won OSG. So if they spent a full
They don't
year,
do anything. They only do the one show.
Yeah, so,
But they still can't be beat by this other person.
They can't, but what if they had what if they treated the year the same way that the guy who was winning everything else treated it? So what if they went to all of these competitions? Maybe that would show sort of chinks in the armor, like, where their weaknesses are, but they've had a perfect prep for one show and dedicated their life to doing well in this one competition.
I hate to admit this, like the first time I've ever really thought about this, but I like the idea of doing more and winning less as a way to be better.
Experience.
Do you know what I mean?
Wow, yeah.
Like if I do 10 shows and take second and third in all of them, but somebody only does one show and they take first.
Yeah. Well, if we bring it back to Zydrunas, the reason I consider him the greatest is because unlike other people in that era who were also winning big shows, Zydrunas competed week in, week out. He has, I think it was from 2006 to 2011, a 56 podium streak. So he was on a podium 56 times in a row. So that includes Lithuania's Strongest Man once a year. But that also included the World's Strongest Man, the Arnold, all of the big competitions against all of the best guys. So there may have been a year there where he didn't win Worlds. But when you've got a track record like that going, 56 podiums in a row, I
honestly can't wrap my head around that.
No, it is hard to, wrap your head around. And I just don't see how someone competing 2 or 3 times a year can compare to that.
Right now, 2 people I'm thinking of specifically are Dean McVie and Ben Donen.
Okay.
So Donen's just like crazy.
Yeah, he's really good.
I mean, he should be a 90.
Yeah.
But that's fine if he can make weight.
Okay.
He's crazy strong. But Dean is just like on this tear, and there's something in sort of for me, like to bring the subjectivity to it, like there's something in like, not even that he keeps winning all these things leading up to the show. It's like, there's like an energy to it and like almost like he's greedy for it, which seems to me like to rank him higher in a certain way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
and there's, certain formats of competition suit athletes better sometimes. And if I take it to Loz, like he was always really, really good at the one-day shows. The slower paced ones like the World's Strongest Man never suited him as well. But then if you look at someone who was, a rival at the time, and Terry Hollands, not so good at the one-day shows a lot of the time, but really, really excelled at the World's Strongest Man. So that's another factor to consider. How is the format affecting that performance? And the mindset especially, like if you have one bad event, it's really hard to maybe have to wait a full day before you can come back and kind of correct that.
So what is greatness? What is greatness to you?
It's factors that go into it, isn't there? So I would say, accolades. So that's competition wins, world records, everything would fall into that. Legacy. So eyes that they brought to the sport, the way that they've grown the sport. So some people, Eddie Hall is a great example. I was going to say,
like an Eddie Hall.
Yeah.
Sure.
So obviously the 500 kilos was a momentous occasion. A lot of people like to bring it back to the fact that Eddie only won World's Strongest Man once, but he's created such a legacy. He's almost turned himself into a mythical creature, where there are still people who, on the internet saying, Eddie Hall is the world's strongest man because, and the amount of eyes he brought to the sport as well, he definitely helped grow the sport, especially in the UK. So legacy would be a part of that. What else? What else goes into greatness?
So, I'll be a little candid with you. One of the reasons I started thinking about this was a couple of years ago. I filmed something for Josko, and I said I want to be the greatest lightweight strongman that there is or that there was.
Okay.
So I wanted somehow in my mind at the time, Now, this is before I took second place, then fourth place, and then took a year off, right?
Oh, yes.
So this is after coming off a fresh win, and I was like, I'm going to be the...
Yeah.
So I said, I want to be the greatest. And I knew that it meant something, but I didn't know what the building blocks to getting there were. So I thought, if I, whatever it is that I do, that anytime someone says 80 kilo strongman, that's Tommy, like for sure. And then what I wanted was years later, somehow, for them to still point back to me and say, no.
Your name is like synonymous with that. Too.
Exactly. Yeah. So what, I don't even know what the fuck that means, honestly. I just, for me, it just means I need to win OSG as many times as possible.
Yeah.
So if I win that 10 times in a row, I think that's pretty good. But
it's no good if no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
Because if you can catch the imagination of one person, and you're someone I actually find hugely entertaining on Instagram. Remember the first time, the first video I saw of you, you were sort of slow,
the flow
prancing about a screen. And I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? I love him already. and that's what the sport needs. Like, personality shouldn't be more important than the performance, obviously. But anyone can resonate with the fact that that is entertaining. And then if that person then can look at what you're doing in more depth, oh, I really like this guy. He makes me laugh. I want to see how he does in this competition. Because we support people when we care, don't we?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of other sports do really well. If you look at fighting and stuff like that, people get behind the story and the person and their journey. And it's not just because you want to watch a fight, because if it was just two random men fighting, yeah, it's entertaining to a point, but it's because you know their history and you follow them and their journey and their story that you're really invested in how it goes for them. And why can't it be the same in Strongman?
After speaking with Liz, I realized that what I was really interested in was greatness. It's one thing to be the best, but I wanted to be the greatest. Chapter 2, Greatness versus Excellence. Just do an introduction of yourself, tell us who you are, and tell us why you think I invited you on the show to talk about greatness.
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I think we have some interesting conversations over the years. Like I suppose, from our encounters, like we both realised that each other, we're not just athletes, we're kind of deep, complicated beings. And I suppose, I think maybe that kind of connection and that respect and that kind of intrigue, I suppose my unique perception of, like some people seem to describe me as like an outside of the box thinker, or a bit like a lateral thinker, or I'm not as affected by norms as many other people are, I suppose. Like I just kind of, I've always managed, I've been lucky in terms of the fact that I've been able to just make up my own rules and coast through life doing what I want, I suppose. So I suppose defending normal people, it is very easy to just be affected by and directed by societal norms. But that's what societal norms are by definition, aren't they? It's just what the average person does, statistically speaking, and how they react to a certain thing. Where I've always, I'm happy being wrong, and I suppose when you get comfortable with that, which isn't something I've always been comfortable with, because as much as I am nowadays, in terms of I can make up my own mind on things, when you have to do things that other people do, i.e. like go to school and do exams and stuff like that, you do have to jump through hoops and fit in to an extent. And it makes me realise now, like I look back, particularly secondary school in England, where you have to like pass basically like a competence test to get in. So when you're at primary school and you don't have to like study and learn things parrot fashion to pass exams, it's more about like, say, your general IQ and how intuitive you are, and you haven't had to learn the art of how to pass an exam, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But that's another.
That's actually really interesting, because it's. I mean, I had no intention of going down this road when I thought we'd talk, but no, it makes total sense. It's true. You do sort of parrot things back, and you learn the art of passing an exam, which is mirrors sort of societal norms. Whereas if you take someone's entire education, you sit them down and you say, don't tell me what you learned, but tell me why what you learned is important. That's like such a different brain exercise that I think we really don't get. It's up to you to sort of implement those ideas and strategies. But I think not a lot of people can do that, which is why you're here. And this is the longest intro for someone ever. But you still haven't said your name.
I know. My name's Josh. And I enjoy playing sport, and I'm lucky enough to play sport and get paid to teach people to be good at playing sport. So I'm just living the dream, and I feel very grateful every day that, I'm able to just do Strongman because I enjoy it and I enjoy helping other people do it.
So I've got this problem. Maybe you can help me solve it. How does that sound to you? Is it okay?
Yeah, sounds great, man.
Okay. So my question, it's a very simple question with an almost impossible answer. What is greatness?
What greatness within Strongman or within?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, this is mostly a Strongman podcast. I mean, I like to talk about things in the ether, but, I think the people listening are definitely Strongman mostly.
Yeah, I think it's something that you can't really define in the moment. I think you can define excellence, and I think we can all seek to pursue excellence because I think it's more quantifiable when you can decide whatever lift or how many trophies do I have, like how many would I have to do to beat so and so. But true greatness, because there isn't this kind of definition. I don't know. I think maybe I'm wrong, but maybe greatness can only be defined retrospectively. Could I do something within Strongman that, like today or at my next competition, or go for a certain record that would make me great? Like, would that turn me into a great? If I went and deadlifted 505 kilos, would I be a great? It would certainly be achieving excellence, but give me one example of somebody who's achieved greatness within sport, and give me one example well, go on then, I'll ask you your next question in a moment.
I think the greatest strongman of all time is John Paul Sigmarsson, because there's something electric about him. Like, there's just something like absolutely dominant and about him. And also, he died. So somehow the idea of greatness is amplified, right? Like, he gets amplified somehow. And I don't think he could necessarily beat someone else. I don't think he could beat Brian Shaw, but like he exemplifies everything that I want in strongman, like good looking guy, but also smart, a little crazy, but also very sort of calculated and very good with his body, right? Like, it's like if you could take the absolute feral wildness of, say, like Finley Mercer and put him in like a very calculated mind like yours, I think we'd have the greatest weight class strongman of all time.
So I find it fascinating that this perception has obviously developed as time has passed. And it would be interesting to see what you would think at the time when Sigmarsson passed, at the time, whether you would feel as strongly as you do now, whether you would feel like he'd achieved greatness at the time of his passing, or whether that's been magnified by the context of what's gone after it. And so this leads me on to my next question, which is, who do you think is achieving greatness right now? And is that possible? Like, going back to what I was saying before, of course we can say he's achieving excellence, but is it possible to define somebody in the process of achieving greatness right now? Is it happening, or can we not know?
I really almost think you can't know. I think looking for greatness in real time is like trying to watch and gamble with the stock market. You can be like, oh, I can tell it's going up. I'm going to put all my money in it. This is my choice. And then it crashes, right? Like, I remember when Ben Donen won PSL as an 80, and then he went on to like dominate OSG as an 80. And oh my God, the weights he was deadlifting, the weights he was squatting in the gym, there were definitely stories on official posts on Official Strongman. Is Donen the greatest? Is he the greatest 80 of all time? And obviously I got really pissed off. I was like, well, he's only done one show. It's not fair. But, then he injured himself. He didn't do so well. He got too heavy. He had a bad weight cut. And now he's a 90. And now he's a power lifter. I don't think anyone would say, and this is absolutely nothing against Doan, I think he's one of the craziest physical specimens I've ever seen in real life. I don't think anyone would say he's the greatest 80 or the greatest 90. He's just, I mean, we'll see what he does as a 90 sort of a thing. I think he came in and just absolutely dominated the 80 scene for like a year, right? And that's what happens, I think, to a lot of people as they come in and out. Yeah, maybe, I guess I think John Hack would be somebody maybe I would say is achieving greatness right now, only like because he's won so much in powerlifting, just the stuff I see him do in the gym, which I get so upset when people say gym lifts don't count. I think gym lifts very much count. That's where we do 99.9% of our lifting. I think they count. And, he's also done stuff in Strongman, which is, I don't know, it just speaks to something like his ability.
I even think the vulnerability of putting himself out there as like he's such a smart, calculated guy. And he knows that he would have had a good shot at winning OSG this year. But I think he'll have done his research and realised that there are other good guys that can potentially beat him. And I think that, for me, that vulnerability of actually putting himself in that arena when he's so dominant in the one that people label him the GOAT for, I think that is contributes to the greatness.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bo Jackson. He played football. I can't remember who for. But you've just never seen a more gifted athlete. And then he went to play baseball and just absolutely crushed baseball. And there's actually a documentary about him that I saw several years ago. And even now he bow hunts and he'll kill a deer with a bow and then drag the deer back himself. I mean, just there's a little bit of a myth involved as well. And I think John has a little bit of a myth about him because he says so few words.
100%. And the part for me that contributes to his greatness is the way that, if you follow a little bit of powerlifting and you see people doing say crazy people like me, people with the mentality like me, for instance. If I was doing powerlifting, I'd be doing the lowest low bar squat that you could get away with. I'd be doing a crazy short range of motion bench press, widest grip possible, massive arch. I'd be probably looking to sumo. Whereas you look at John, he'll just high bar, walk it out himself, a relatively close grip bench press, not a massive arch, significant range of motion. And then just a conventional deadlift where he just goes and picks it up, doesn't he?
Well, Josh has added a few more things for me to think about. The fact that greatness differs from excellence, where excellence can be clearly defined, maybe greatness, not so much. That there's an amount of vulnerability that must be shown if we're to achieve greatness, and that eschewing societal norms might be necessary to be great.
But I suppose what I'm saying is that mindset, you've got to realize that we're in upper percentiles of self-belief, and statistically speaking, you go to a normal, even a decent level strongman gym or something, and you just go and you speak to people and you get the vibe that these guys don't believe in themselves as much as I believe in myself, and it's not kind of, like you say, there's no ego thing with me. I don't think I'm good because of whatever. It's just I recognize that actually most people do have this normal mindset of, the second guessing themselves, the doubting themselves, the getting nervous about things.
Well, this is exactly what you said a little bit ago about John Hack putting himself in Strongman. It's putting yourself in a vulnerable position. There's almost the fear of embarrassment. But if you believe that you can win something and you don't, you're going to have to deal with, your emotions around that or your feelings around that. But if you don't ever really strive for something, then you never have to sort of, deal with how heartbreaking it can be to not achieve the thing that you've worked maybe your whole life for.
Thing where I can relate to this kind of, I won't say greatness, but certainly excellence, and doing something that nobody else had done before me, was in 2022 when I went for dumbbell record and I wanted to hit 100 kilos after weighing in under 80 kilos and be the first, because nobody else had done it before.
That's
the record
a huge number.
The record, what was it? It was Flash had 97.1 or something like that. But looking back, at the time, there is no way on earth I should have even attempted that dumbbell record because I wasn't in a good mental state. I'd had an accident, like a car accident, a couple of months leading before. Like I was suffering mentally with what had gone on. But I turned up and I did it. Like there's a photo on the wall at home. I can see myself holding the dumbbell, the 100 kilos or whatever. But for me, I don't see that. What I see was everything that was going on under the surface. And I just look at that moment and that reminds me of how cool I had to be and like how ice cold I had to be to just switch everything off that was going on in my head and still believe in myself that I could do something at the time that I believed was great.
So let me sum up a little idea I'm having. The more you're able to ignore what's normal in favor of what it is you actually think or believe, I think there might be a positive correlation with greatness, however we choose to define it. Because what are the chances you're going to be the greatest of all time and just kind of do the same thing everyone else does? Liz talked about the story. Well, this person did the same exact thing everyone else does, and they were just a little bit better at it, so we call them great. Well, that's no story. And all of these ideas do make sense to me. They sound like answers to what I'm looking for. I didn't realize before that even finding the right question to ask was important. I thought I had it. But the more I talk, the more I realize I didn't even understand my own question. Before we wrapped up, Josh left me with one final thought. And it's something I don't think many of us have considered.
Is greatness is it even a positive thing? And what I mean by that is, so any greatness or any kind of hyper specialist in anything, like it comes with a cost, doesn't it? When I'm getting close to a competition and I'm thinking about, as soon as I wake up in the morning, as soon as I'm on the toilet, I'm thinking about what chalk should I use on log today? Like what knee sleeve should I wear? Like my daughter will ask me a question and then I'll hear my partner say to her, "Daddy hasn't heard you." And I'm there and I've heard the noise, but I'm thinking about something else. I've learned how to be more stoic and how to use that to, turn up to training. And I don't want to train because I feel rubbish. Doesn't matter. I'm a robot. I'll turn up and I'll just train because I'm an animal. That's what I tell myself. But when I'm like using that mindset for other aspects of my life where I need to be, need to be more caring. My daughter gets upset because she's just fallen over and hurt my knee. And I'm like ice cold. I'm like solving the problem. Say, right, how can we prevent that happening again? She doesn't need me to solve a problem. She needs me to be there and give her a hug and let her be upset and be supportive. Be upset, cry. Don't be tough. Cry. Be emotional.
Chapter 3, Concentric Circles, Floating in Space, and the Lie of Legacy.
So my name is Andrew Tracy. I'm many things. We're all many things, right? And I'm sure we'll actually get onto this, but I'm probably like top of the list would be I'm the fitness director for Men's Health magazine, have been that for 5+ years. And as such, I get to conduct interviews with podcasts with some pretty successful people and spend a lot of time thinking about people that, how would you put it, are, worthy of public attention, or at very least, the public pays them attention, so we pay them some attention. On top of that, and for me, I think that's probably the most relevant thing for you for this chat. For me, success, greatness, these are things that I think about all the time. Like as a writer, these are my hobby horse. I've studied a few of the different therapy modalities. acceptance, commitment therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, those sorts of things where these ideas of what is it to be successful? What is it to be great? What's greatness to you? We're sort of circling that same thing. And I also describe myself as Buddhist adjacent or Buddhist curious. So this whole idea of identity and fulfillment and success and greatness, I spend way too much time thinking about it. So I think that, I hope, if you think of those things as sort of concentric circles, the Venn diagram of which will hopefully be our conversation today.
Yeah, I like that you say circling it, because that's sort of what I'm finding is the shape of this is sort of moving and amorphous, and the question itself is even getting wiggly. You've already given me a new word, success, to think about alongside greatness. And in my conversations before, we sort of teased apart the difference between greatness and, say, excellence. And, a lot of these things are sort of semantic, which, I love myself a good semantic philosophy daydream, but your sort of proximity with maybe a certain kind of person most of us would aspire to be like. And yeah, the idea of success is wrapped up in that. And I really can't believe I hadn't thought of that word before.
So that's interesting, right? It's interesting. There's a thing, I think they call it folk etymology, which is where we sort of look at the etymology of words and how you might think of one thing and one concept and one paradigm. Suddenly you use a synonym for it and you have to look at it in an entirely different way because of these overlaps, and you have to bring in new things. And I think that's such a cool thing to do because it does make you rethink, like, we might define greatness like this, but is greatness and is being the greatest, is that an objective measure or a subjective measure? And if it's an objective measure, what is the subjective experience of greatness? And does it feel like success? Is it a complete overlap, or is there some overlap? Or might it be that they're actually two completely different things that sometimes do coalesce, but someone can be the greatest of all time, but do they feel successful? And if they feel successful, or they would say they're successful, would we, if they were to describe their subjective experience or give us some clues as to what their subjective experience is through their actions in the world, would we then say, I don't think you're successful, or that's not the kind of success I want to feel, even though we would call them the greatest?
It sounds like you're saying if we do want to be great or the greatest or have greatness, we should look to those who are great. But if we look to those who are great and we look at their experience might not work or mirror what we would even want our experience to be like. And we could call that success. I think we would want anyone's success sort of almost as a one-to-one. It sounds like you're saying we don't necessarily want people's greatness because greatness might come at a different cost than success.
But I guess where I would tease them apart then would be, I would look at greatness as objective measure is the wrong thing, but let's say something from the outside looking in. It's almost like a heuristic we use. They're great. They're greater. You're greater than the rest in your field. That's greatness, right? Whereas success is it's a hard and fast thing, right? You either succeed or you don't. I guess I could very much imagine, I can do the thought experiment where I could say, I feel as though I could be great at something and not feel successful in that. Maybe the thing I was looking for in that greatness, or maybe, often I don't think people are looking for greatness.
That's just so crazy though. I mean, look, I know exactly, it's funny, obviously, I know exactly what you mean and it makes total sense, but hearing it sort of for the first time is maybe the first time I've actually thought about that. I can achieve greatness, but not feel successful or not feel.
Well, let's do that sort of faux etymology thing on the word success, right? Success, it's an achievement, it's a fulfillment, it's the sort of the apex, the pinnacle of something. Something has been achieved here. We're at the end of some sort of road. Now let's apply that then, and let's assume that the whole idea of success is some sort of fulfillment of something. And if we're talking about success in our lives, then we're really talking about some sort of existential fulfillment, okay? And then let's take someone let's take some non-contentious people who we would say, like people would happily say are goats. I know this is a conversation we've had off air where the word gets thrown around a lot, but let's take some people that actually predate the term goat because that makes it easier. Let's take Tiger Woods, right? clearly one of, if not the greats in their field, but not somebody who I would look at and say, the way you are acting in your life, your behaviors, the level of happiness you appear to be sort of outwardly displaying doesn't look like you feel successful to me. It looks like you're still like scratching for something else. You don't seem like a happy guy. And the same with Michael Jordan, sort of inarguably great. You know, I'm not a huge basketball fan. I'm extremely dangerously English, so I don't know much about it.
I don't know much about basketball either, so we can both just pretend.
Talk shit. Yeah. So I'm told via the medium of the movie Space Jam that he's a very good he's a very good basketball player, right? So I think it was when he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. So a pretty objective measure that you're one of the greatest of all time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Jordan.
But rather than get up on stage and even feign humility and some sort of reverence for this award he's been given, he got up on stage and he kind of reeled off a list of everyone who told him he'd never make it. And this is like such a Facebook thing, isn't it? Like, oh, you know, I'm coming back from everyone who slammed the door in my face. Yeah. But to see, but it feels like something that you would transcend. Like to me, like that feels like a low level of sort of spiritual or psychological growth to not feel like that anymore. Yet this guy who is, we would say he's the great, like you said earlier, we aspire to be someone like that. We aspire to be as great as Michael Jordan. And he's clearly been carrying all of this baggage around with him for 20 odd years. And
Michael Jordan, remarkably petty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's right. That's why he's the meme, isn't it? And I took that personally. And he is he's the embodiment of I took that personally. Would you want that? You know, I'm sure he has. I definitely want it over other things in a sort of materialistic sense of the word. Like I'm not above having nice things and having nice accolades and people thinking you're good at your job. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to spend 20 years, whatever, decades, doing something and having it as an incredible an opportunity as he had in life relative to other people, and to be carrying the baggage of everyone who said I couldn't do it along with me. So to me, great, successful from the outside looking in, but fulfilled, I don't know. I don't know about that. And this is where we sort of tease those ideas apart of success, greatness, and fulfillment. What do you want? What is it to be great from the outside looking in, but living sort of a shell of a life? And this is something I think about a lot.
Okay, I know I keep pulling you away from the conversation to have my little thoughts, but this conversation with Andrew is really starting to bring some things together for me. So let's go over what we've determined in our totally not thorough, unscientific way is required for greatness. You need to put yourself in a vulnerable position, one in which you have the potential to fail. You need to have belief in yourself, even when others don't. And maybe you need to carry that resentment with you, and you have to do things differently than everyone else. So it sounds like you have to be a weirdo with a superiority complex that harbors massive insecurity and has a compulsive disorder to never quit. I think I'm only just now starting to see the cost of greatness. Not in the subjective sense, but in the very objective sense. Say, if you were building a video game character and building up your stats, right? As you increase the strength, the endurance would drop. So you raise the endurance, but now the agility goes down. So you raise the agility, but now the strength has dropped again. It's so easy for us to look at what the peak stat is without even noticing the other shortcomings. But these are real choices that we have to make in our real lives. And to increase focus in one area is to necessarily decrease it in another. I told Liz that I wanted to be the greatest 80 ever. But is that something I really wanted, or is it just something that I said? Because if it's what I really wanted, I have to take a hard look at myself and look at what I wasn't willing to give up in order to achieve it. Clearly, I made a compromise somewhere. Becoming world's strongest man didn't feel like greatness. There was no sense of fulfillment. It felt like nothing. It did feel surreal, but only because after the podium moment passed, I was still me. I still had to pack my bags. Nothing really changed. Why do we aspire to greatness? Why is that idea so romantic to us?
Yeah, and I mean that is the perennial problem with how we relate to any goal. I think about this all the time. We aim at something, going back to a word I used earlier, fulfillment. We aim at something as if that's going to give us that fulfillment. It's going to give us that wholeness we're seeking. And then you do it and nothing has changed other than the fact you did it. Again, also, I want to make it really clear that I'm not saying that greatness automatically equals some sort of like existential crisis or sadness. What I'm saying is I don't think greatness equals happiness. That hollow feeling of, oh, I thought this was going to give me everything and here I am with my ass out in the shower again and nothing's changed. That hollow feeling, I think, is what a lot of people feel all the time after they achieve something that they've pegged all of their hopes and dreams on. And another word I want to throw in here, just because you were really making me think about it as you were sort of describing greatness then. Another word I want to throw in is hero. And I think those are words I would imagine at some point, this is something I love to do. I'd imagine at some point, if you went to like the Greek or Latin etymology of those words, there'll be some crossover between greatness and hero at some point. I don't know that off the top of my head. It's just a guess. Hero, we love an archetype, right? Like archetypes are our models for how we should operate in the world. They're these big, clunky sort of signposts of this is what this type of person is. This is what this type of person is. And we create all these stories around these archetypes to help us, I guess, explain or even inform how we should behave or what we should want or whatever in the world. And a hero, I would say, to be great, to be a GOAT, that would, to me, I guess that would be synonymous with being a hero. And that is something that we all aspire to, consciously or otherwise. And especially in the West, heroic individual acts are highly praised. Like we love the lone wolf. We love like this idea that you as an individual can go out into the world by yourself and become the greatest of all time is a big deal. And I think that's what we do with these people that we call greats. What we actually mean, I think what we mean when we use the word GOAT is the word hero. They're a hero. What you said that made me think of it was when you were describing this kind of idea of sacrifice, this kind of idea of putting yourself out there, of risk. All of these things you're describing are heroism. It's how we describe a hero. And I think that's a big part of when we make someone a great, the greatest, is they're not just good at something. They're not just objectively good. Like they have this archetypical story around them, whether it's true or not, and whether we even kind of know the details of their life that raises them so far above the competition. And this is something we see, I guess, in people that we would call GOATs, that actually it is disputable whether or not they were even the greatest in their sport, right? There's other people around different time periods or even around the same time period who are as good, if not better. But for some reason, and I mean, in this day and age, you could just put it down to like having a good social media manager, right? But for some reason, they're the ones that make it. And sometimes it's infamy. I'm thinking of someone like, I want to say Mike Tyson, but he was a very good boxer. He is great. He is great. Yeah. So it's hard to argue that. But a lot of people that have all the hallmarks of a hero as opposed to just being very, very good at their sport, I think what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is that contributes to what we think of as a GOAT. Do they have this charisma? Do they have this presence? Are they where your mind goes when you think of this sport? And I think that's all storytelling, isn't it? I don't even mean that in the media sense. I mean that in our minds.
Okay, so at this point in the conversation, what Andrew is talking about has got me thinking about this other thing that's been going on in my life. I guess it's sort of related, but let me just try to explain it and we'll see if it makes any sense. So with just about anything, we have the totality of human knowledge and information available to us. And with AI, the access to that information is only accelerating. So here's my problem. There's nothing in my life that I enjoy. And I mean that. There's nothing, no thing that I can think of that can't be reduced to a task with a vast library of knowledge online about how to do that thing perfectly and some expert willing to teach you for a price. Even now, my mind is tuned to think of this podcast as a reverse engineering of greatness that can be monetized. And it's the same with training. We've gotten so good at training for Strongman that to not follow these new rules explicitly feels like you're letting yourself down. Think about it. We've all heard people say, the one that wins is the one that recovers the best. Well, holy shit. I can't even relax after training without it becoming a task to perfect. And everything feels that way to me. It feels like a failure to ignore the perfect way to do something. So every day I live my life in flux between task perfection and feeling like a failure. The only thing I enjoy in my life with no strings attached is my morning coffee. And it's not even good coffee, it's just coffee. Drinking coffee is something I do for its own sake and not for the thing it gets me in the end. Food? I eat that for protein and energy to train. Sleep? I make sure I get enough so I can be healthy. Even training, I only did it to win. To be a winner, I only cared about what it got me in the end. The last 18 months of training for me were brutal. I hated almost every minute of it. It affected my mood and my relationships, but I pushed through to compete one last time, and I didn't even win.
In our society, we praise what we would call a winner's mindset. That's seen as like a positive thing, right? As a winner's mindset. I've got a winner's mindset. When, again, if we actually look at what that is and what it isn't, to say you have a winner's mindset kind of sets you up for a very real and very high risk of discontentment. Like if winning is really if it's the pinnacle, it's all that you will allow yourself to believe will bring you fulfillment, will bring you wholeness, you're on a very, it's a tightrope walk. It's not even. Like you have to be the best at whatever you're doing. You've given success a very slim set of criteria. And for me, trying to answer your sort of predicament as best I can, broadening our criteria for success is the quickest way to find joy. The more we streamline it, the less likely we are to hit it. We're just narrowing the bullseye, right? And is there a more narrow bullseye than just saying winning? The very binary objective, winning, because I have a winner's mindset. And I know it's a little bit trite. Everyone talks about like, got to learn to love the process, like me as, me more than anyone else. But I think people misunderstand that, or not misunderstand it. I think they understand it, but they don't know how to properly put it into action, because we talk about the process, but we still link it sort of inextricably to the goal. The process is to get us to the goal. And then if you don't win and you have a winner's mindset, if this is audio only, I'm doing sort of air quotes. If you don't win, then it doesn't matter how much you enjoyed the process. Retroactively, all of that will be gone, right? Because without meaning to be too metaphysical, once you're out of the present moment, everything that was is now memory, and memory can be deleted, it can be altered, it can be tainted. If you enjoyed every step of the process and then you don't win, and that is all you wanted, the retroactive enjoyment is probably not going to be available to you, because it's forever sort of tainted with this, it didn't do anything for me anyway. I didn't win. So I think this goes back to the thing I was saying before about the sort of perennial problem with goal setting. Now, I want to be clear here. This is actually something I was writing about earlier, because I think it's something I write about a lot, and my thoughts could be misconstrued as extreme. I don't think goals are bad. I don't think they're not useful. I think like anything else, nothing in the universe exists unless it's in relation to something else. It's how we relate to things. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I want to be the best X, I want to win a competition, blah, blah, blah. It's how we relate to that. It's kind of what losing means to us. And I always think it's kind of funny, but it's kind of very predictable in our, sort of late stage capitalist, hyper sort of, how can I put it? Like the egoic rewards that are available at any juncture are huge. We can find them very easily. You don't necessarily have to do anything to go out and difficult to get them, which sounds like it should be a good thing, but is a bad thing, because then you need more. I don't think that we should give everyone a participation trophy. What I think we should do at both a sort of societal level and an individual level, this is something we have to take responsibility for, is find a great enough surface area for everyone to find something that they are successful at. Like everyone's the GOAT at something. There's definitely something only you've done.
Everyone is the GOAT at something. Oh my God, I love that.
And people are not going to like that, because that sounds like one of those sort of cop-out, we're all special in our own way thing. And it is. Like, it literally, that's, if you put what I just said into ChatGPT and ask to say it to you in a slightly different way, it would say we're all special in our own way. But what I'm saying is, we've decided that there's like 7 or 8 things that are worth being successful at, or that we would conclude are successful. And some of them are so fucking insane, so niche, they don't really contribute to society. And we're like, no, that guy's a hero. That guy's a hero. And I'm not knocking any of these people. Like, I've met some of these people, and they're incredible, really cool people who potentially, even if you removed all of their societal, cultural success, they'd still be really cool people. I've also met some that aren't. And it's like, if we define success very narrowly as here's like 10 things, if you're not the best at them, then that's not objective. And by objective, I mean like from the outside looking in, success. Then if you play that game, you're going to see at some point, you're going to feel at some point like there's no point. If you've set yourself up with a winner's mindset, and for whatever reason, your life at some juncture isn't conducive to winning at any of those things that you've put a lot of merit on, how's that going to feel? It's not going to feel great. And circling all the way back, I mean, do you think Michael Jordan was happy by your definition of happiness when he got on that stage and he was like, hold on, I'm still thinking about this like high school basketball coach I had? Because I don't think he can really be happy if he's carrying that along with him. Yet he is a great example of be careful what you wish for.
It sounds like what you're saying is greatness, and there's a psychological effect. We're more averse to loss than we are attracted to gain.
If you think of that on a sort of biological, psychological grounding, that makes sense, because the cost of winning, like on an evolutionary level, the cost of losing should evolutionarily outweigh the cost of winning, just in the sense of the cost of losing to us biologically is dying, and whereas the cost of winning is just surviving a little bit more.
Some like extra fruit in our basket or something. Yeah,
reproduction, all these things that we're geared to do. But if you think about us on a very biological level, what fear, anxiety, all of these sort of nervous system reactions are to things that are going to kill you. So it makes sense to want to not die more than you want to have an extra few nuts, like you say.
I love framing it around dying, because it sounds like you're saying greatness is about the furthest idea we have away from loss. It's not just winning. It's like winning compounded over a lifetime, which we see as so far away from losing, which we know now as death. But yeah, we're not seeing all of the loss involved in that.
Yeah, in getting that in your day to day. And I think obviously if you think about that, there's another aspect here, which is legacy. To an ego, legacy is immortality. It's immortality that you're never going to be here to experience, so it's kind of irrelevant. I think about this a lot. I think people talk about legacy, and legacy is all, we kind of think it's another thing that we sort of heap a bit of praise on, and we talk about it like a virtue. So what's my legacy going to be? And that really is ego. It really is ego. Of all of the things, it seems on the surface sort of unselfish, because you're talking about something that will be there when you're gone, but you can create lasting change. We all create lasting change every single day to lesser or greater degree without having to worry about whether or not that's your legacy. And legacy is such a strange thing, because you're kind of, what you're saying is, I'm willing to do this good thing or this thing for society or whatever it may be, but you better make sure you fucking credit me every time it comes up when I die, even though I won't be here. And I think social media, kind of going back to one of your points there, what social media has created is a very tight feedback loop for that. If you think about our ego in a sense as this sort of conglomeration of different stories that sort of take the form of this one narrative that we call us, or our ego thinks of itself as us, social media has given you this ability to sort of make that hyper real. Like, you can actually physically curate a character and and have the same feedback loop we all have every day of fear, of aversion and desire, of getting what we want, of sort of behaving in certain ways that we know will get us what we want or will move us away from what we don't want. Social media has created a really tight version of that. It almost works in real time. Like you say, it rewards information. Well, we've created a world where you don't have to wait to see if something is rewarded. The feedback is there immediately. We have an algorithm that will tell you how to be rewarded, which we have in real life, but it's on this much bigger playing field of the world. Whereas on social media, we know like, if I do this, reward. If I do this, reward. And again, a little bit trite, and I know everyone likes to talk about dopamine. Other neurotransmitters are available, but it's definitely a factor. And I think it's given everyone a taste of a form of greatness, because it's just like a model village for all of our egos, isn't it? And when I'm saying ego, I don't mean that in the sort of, he's a big-headed guy sense. I mean that in the sort of clinical sense of the word. We've created this virtual playground where you can build your own character, like you say, in a certain way by bigging up or withholding certain factors. And you can go out and you can try and be great on this platform. You can try and be the greatest on this platform. And as above, so below, I think it does exactly the same thing as in real life, where you have to kind of be very clear about what you want to get out of it. Otherwise, you're sort of, you're just going to end up in that endless loop. I think what all of us want, if you just kept digging, you've got that sort of cheesy Simon Sinek, what's your why? If you were to ask Michael Jordan what's his why when he was 15 years old, I don't know. He would have said, I just want to be the greatest basketball player of all time. You say, why? And maybe after a few of them, he would have got to all of these people that said I couldn't. And for some reason, we love that as a motivation. I don't know why. Maybe because it sounds good and it sounds heroic and it sounds mythiopic and it sounds like David versus Goliath. And we love that. We're trained to love that. But if you said then, but why? Like, why do you care about? And then he'd say, well, I just want their approval. And then, well, why? And then I just want to, feel accepted. And we're like, well, why? And if you keep going, everyone just wants to be content. Everyone just wants to be happy. Everyone just wants to sit there. And even if they don't feel joy, even if they're not overjoyed in every single moment of the day, they just want to feel not shit. Wouldn't it be nice? I said this recently and people kind of disagreed with me, which I found crazy, is like peace is such an underrated goal. Because if you have peace, you don't actually want for anything. It's the absence of a goal. And I think that's all we want, really. And I think on a very evolutionary sort of biological level, peace is probably what our ancestors felt when they were pretty certain there was nothing around that was going to kill them. And they were pretty certain they had enough. They had everything they needed. They were content. That's what the word content means. They were fulfilled. I tell you what isn't a component of peace is, making sure you've got the most Instagram followers.
Honestly.
There's a concept in early Buddhism called hungry ghosts. They're beings who have an insatiable appetite, but they have a very small throat. They have a very right, so they can never eat enough to sort of sate their appetite. That's their curse, and it's a metaphor for us, for people. But I think trying to tie it back to a couple of things I've said already. If you're saying I want to be the greatest of all time, that's your appetite. And if you're saying, I want to do it through this very sort of eye of a needle set of criteria, I want to be the greatest under 80 kilo. I mean, that's getting really fucking small, that criteria, man. The greatest under 80 kilo strongman who's ever lived. The criteria is the size of your mouth, the size of your neck, the amount you can eat. And your appetite is the size of the goal. And you could never possibly feed that. I think it's okay for us to look at someone and say, oh yeah, they're the greatest of all time. But I don't think it's a very healthy aim. I don't think in my life I've ever met anybody who has nailed that. And I'm talking about people who are incredibly successful, great in their field. They have all of the societal successes, as well as people who are incredibly, what we would call spiritually accomplished or psychologically accomplished. I don't think I've ever met anybody who always sees the good and is has consistently not let the bad stick to them. So I do think it's work. I certainly haven't nailed it, but I do think if there's a job worth doing, it's making your everyday better. I think that's way worth doing than being the best at anything in the world. It's just being the best at having good days.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you to my guests, Liz Shahlei, Josh Lancaster, Andrew Tracy. As for me, it's been a few weeks since I started the edit process for this podcast. And in that time, I've definitely started to notice some things that I enjoy. Take this podcast, for instance. It's not great. I'm not a professional. It's certainly not perfect. But I just enjoy it. I love talking through ideas with people. As for greatness, I think I'm a little less obsessed with it now than I once was. And there are a million reasons I can think of why I was obsessed with it, and a million reasons why I still might be obsessed with it. But I'm gonna do my best to ignore all of that and focus more on having some good days, just having really good days. And that's what I want for all you guys too. I want you to have some really good days. I'll see you next time.